Researchers say 6 new mysterious bursts of radio waves have been detected 3 billion light years away. While the source of the energy remains unknown, some believe it could be signs of aliens communicating to us here on Earth. RT's Marina Portnaya brings us the details.
6 new blasts of radio energy detected from deep space have researchers questioning if extraterrestrial life is attempting to contact human life. Researchers from McGill University in Montreal say they detected the mysterious bursts of energy from the constellation Auriga, each lasting just a few milliseconds. The waves, 3 billion light years away, were reportedly picked up using the Green Bank Telescope in West Virginia and the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico. The detection follows 11 previously recorded outbursts from the same location. Now, fast radio bursts, or FRBs, are emissions that appear temporarily and randomly. According to reports, this is the only known repeater of FRBs. While the origin of the bursts remains an ongoing puzzle, researchers believe the cause is not a one-time event. The SETI Institute, otherwise known as Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, is a nonprofit organization that examines whether FRBs could be a message from aliens. It's unclear if the McGill researchers have requested assistance from SETI. While the discovery could end up monumental, not everyone supports the search for more. Renowned physicist Stephen Hawking has warned against attempts to contact extraterrestrial intelligence. Dr. Hawking believes alerting aliens to life on Earth could end with hostility, particularly because we don't know who is out there and what their capabilities are. Reporting from Miami, Marina Portnaya, RT.
A new report names Christians as the most persecuted religious group on the planet. According to statistics from the Center for Global Christianity, around 90,000 Christians were killed for their faith in 2016. About 70% of those killed in 2016 died in tribal conflicts in Africa because they refused to take up arms. The remaining 30% were killed in terror attacks. The full report from the Center for Global Christianity will be released next month.
And a war of words escalated today between the U.S. and Israel. Earlier, Secretary of State John Kerry said a two-state solution between Israelis and Palestinians was in serious jeopardy. He also defended the Obama administration's decision to abstain from a UN vote condemning Israeli settlements on Palestinian territory. Moments later, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu held his own press conference and called Kerry's Mideast peace plan a, quote, great disappointment. All of this comes less than a month before a new White House administration is set to take office. We get the latest now from RT's Caleb Maupin.
Before Kerry even spoke, the Israeli public security minister came out and called the remarks pathetic and said that Kerry had failed to address these issues during his term as Secretary of State. Now, keep in mind, there's only 22 days left in the Obama administration, and everything suggested by Kerry could easily be thrown out on January 20th when Donald Trump is inaugurated. Now, at this point, Israeli and U.S. relations are at an all-time low.
As Jewish people, we are terribly embarrassed and pained since all these crimes are supposedly being done in our name. And it's a desecration of our religion, when sadly our religion is being misused to justify all these crimes. We hope that the resolution that was just passed, that will lead us to an end of this misuse of my name, of the name of my people, of the Jewish people. This will be a step towards ending this crime of using my religion, God's religion, Judaism, to perpetrate crimes against other people.
Bahraini regime forces have attacked anti-government protesters rallying in support of top Shia cleric Sheikh Isa Qasem. Government forces used tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse the demonstrators in the village of Abu Saiba in northern Bahrain. The protesters condemned measures taken against their spiritual leader and called for the release of all political prisoners. They also slammed the regime's crackdown on the Shia community in the Persian Gulf Kingdom. A similar rally was held in Sanabis village. In June, a Bahraini court accused Sheikh Qasim of promoting sectarianism and violence and revoked his citizenship.
The United States is now coming out and saying it's supportive of this ceasefire, that it's happy it's been established, and it welcomes anything that helps save lives and further a potential ceasefire, a potential peace deal for Syria. Question you've got to be asking yourself, and question many people I know are asking themselves, is how sincere they're being here. Because the pundits, the journalists, they are buying it. At the end of the day, you know, the United States was not invited to chip into the biggest ceasefire deal of the Syrian civil war. The biggest deal, at least on paper so far, that has ever happened. They weren't even invited. And you know, the journalists, the pundits pitched the question to the State Department. And here's their response.
Mr. Kerry doesn't see it as a snub.
No, the Secretary doesn't see this as a snub at all.
Does he not at least feel the U.S. is being sidelined, if not excluded, from what was something the U.S. was leading on?
We are not excluded. We are not being sidelined.
And we are. A readout is quite different from his role before.
And we are still leading.
Right now, this leadership that you're speaking of is all past tense. Is that not true?
I would disagree.
The United States is, if you look, you know, a little backstory, has led every failed effort for a ceasefire, for a peace deal, for any agreement in Syria. Remember the Friends of Syria? Evaporated. The ISSG, and we've got the pundits asked John Kirby again about what what the ISSG, the International Syria Support Group, the US-led coalition of 20 nations, what they've achieved.
I'm not able to report any tangible progress in those talks. They do continue.
Well, they do continue so far fruitlessly. And then you've got the Geneva talks, the talks between Russia and the United States, mostly between Secretary of State John Kerry and Sergei Lavrov. Days and days closeted together in those conference rooms. And what's the result? Every single effort that they try to implement, every single plan collapsed and burned. Nevertheless, now you have this troika: Russia, Iran, and Turkey, who got together in a matter of a few days, secured the Aleppo evacuation, sparing potentially thousands, if not tens of thousands of lives, both rebels and civilians. Yeah. Then they got together again, and they have given us, over the last few weeks, the biggest ceasefire, at least again on paper so far. So here you've got to ask the question: what do you need the United States for?
مصر وليبيا والجزائر ونعلن قبول بيعة من بايع بإذن الله مهزومون وإن المسلمين منتصرون بوليبيين الجوية وقصفهم المستمر ليل نهار على مواقع الدولة الإسلامية ولأجل هذا يقاتل جنود الدولة الإسلامية يقاتلون طاعة.
U.S.-backed Iraqi troops pushing deeper into the city of Mosul today after weeks of relative calm in the fight to take back that city from ISIS. Iraqi troops launched attacks on 5 neighborhoods, and U.S. officials say coalition airstrikes knocked out the last bridge linking the east and west parts of the city. Counterterrorism forces report they have retaken about a quarter of Mosul so far, but they say their progress is slowing down as they push deeper into the eastern part of the city. Mosul is the last major ISIS stronghold in Iraq, and it's the second biggest city in that country with more than 1 million people. Iraqi troops have been fighting to retake Mosul for more than 2 months. Iraq's prime minister promised to defeat ISIS there by the end of this year. Now he says it may take another 3 months to get the job done.
Foreign-backed militants have reportedly violated the latest ceasefire in Syria, hours after it went into effect. The so-called Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said militants took over a position in Hama province in breach of the truce. The UK-based opposition source said clashes broke out in the area near the town of Maharda. Still, witnesses say the ceasefire is largely holding. The deal brokered by Turkey and Russia took effect on Thursday midnight local time. It does not include terrorist groups such as Daesh and the Nusra Front. Iran's foreign minister hailed the agreement, describing it as a major achievement. Mohammad Javad Zarif also called for tackling the roots of terrorism.
Russia has pledged adequate reprisals over the U.S. sanctions. It accuses Washington of making unfounded allegations of Russian interference in the U.S. election. The Kremlin says the U.S. wants to definitively destroy U.S.-Russia relations, which have already reached a low. The spokesperson said that Russian officials categorically reject the unfounded assertions and accusations made about Russia. Moscow will react in an adequate manner based on principles of reciprocity. Meanwhile, the chairman of the State Duma Committee on International Affairs, Leonid Slutsky, called U.S. sanctions and expulsion of Russian diplomats proof of a real paranoia.
Going back to John Kerry's words, just the idea that this hacking had a profound impact on our election. Do you even agree with that premise to begin with?
You know, I don't know if it did or didn't, but the fact that they tried and the fact that they did it, and they did hack into our electoral system deserves punishment.
But what does our electoral system mean? What do you mean by that?
It means that they hacked into the DNC in order to release information that the DNC was proprietary to the DNC. It means that they hacked into John Podesta's email to release information that was proprietary to the Clinton campaign. It means that whether they were successful or not in swaying the outcome of the election, they sure as hell tried to do that. Look, Vladimir Putin's not our friend, and every American president since George Bush has made this mistake. Bush made it, Obama made it, and now Donald Trump is making it, where they think they're going to come to an accommodation with an authoritarian despot whose raison d'etre in life is to bring back the glory of the Soviet Union. This is not a man who will ever do business with us.
Allegations of Russia meddling with the U.S. presidential election this year have been a thorn in their relations. In early October, WikiLeaks exposed the Democratic Party's presidential candidate Hillary Clinton's emails while the presidential campaign was still underway. Democrats said Russian hackers were behind the incident, which aimed to defame their candidate. Earlier this month, the United States pointed its finger at Russian President Vladimir Putin, saying he was personally involved in the hacking. Obama soon pledged to take action in response. Moscow has denied such accusations and said the U.S. has failed to provide any solid proof. President-elect Donald Trump also denounced allegations of Russia conducting cyber attacks to help him win as ridiculous.
This year, New York City officials are placing 20-ton sanitation trucks around where the New Year's Eve celebration will take place. Their efforts were inspired by incidents that occurred in Germany and France, where trucks drove into crowds and killed several people. In all, there will be 65 trucks surrounding the area. New York Police Department Commissioner James O'Neill said, "We live in a changing world now. It can't just be what happens in New York, what happens in the United States. It has to be more what happens worldwide."
In Pakistan, it is the traditional season of planting wheat. However, farmers have not yet sowed their key crops such as wheat in parts of the country due to the ongoing dry spell. The lack of rainfall is also affecting mega water dams which supply water to the traditional agriculture sector. Water levels are plummeting rapidly in a number of reservoirs, leaving little water for farmers to grow their crops.
The wheat crop in the areas which are the wheat growing areas and the areas which are growing other type of crops, it's equally threatening. So if we will not get proper moisture and proper rainfall, and ultimately we will not have enough water in our irrigation system to be provided in our most of the areas where farmers are cultivating wheat, it will impact our yield.
Meteorologists have warned that rainfall is unlikely in weeks to come. Drought-like conditions are prevailing in Pakistan, and it has been attributed to global warming.
Overall temperature is increasing now. As we have seen, the last year is more hotter than the previous one. This is gradually increasing. And because of this increase, many atmospheric changes are taking place. The rain patterns are changing. The drought, that will be the reality. A drought in southern part as well as in the northern part.
Pakistan is desperately waiting for rainfall. Communities have been asked to limit their water usage due to ongoing dry spell, while officials have warned that country's reservoirs will be depleted by end of February if current conditions persist. Javed Rana, Press TV, Islamabad.
Americans in the northeastern part of the country are bracing for a major winter blast, which is expected to bring strong winds and heavy snow. According to CBS News, over half a foot of snow is already unloaded onto New Hampshire, New York, Pennsylvania, and Vermont. Some areas can expect up to 2 feet of snow before the storm moves through. Certain roads are at whiteout levels of visibility, causing problems for motorists.
A Taiwanese high school principal has resigned in the wake of international outrage over an anti-Semitic event involving students. As part of a holiday party, a group of students held a Nazi-themed parade. The students, who are dressed up as Nazi soldiers, hoist swastika banners and parade behind a cardboard tank. One student emerged from the tank, giving the Nazi salute with a red armband attached to his jacket. According to one teacher, students were asked to commemorate a historical figure of their choice. They chose to focus on Adolf Hitler, in part because they could use their black school uniforms. The Israel Economic and Cultural Office in Taipei called the parade deplorable, shocking, and outrageous. Taiwan's education minister publicly apologized for the event. The former principal also apologized to the public and victims of the Holocaust in his letter of resignation. The Taipei Times reports that the school plans to hold a series of educational events and show students films such as Schindler's List and Life is Beautiful. For FoxNews.com, I'm Rob Demetrius.
Korea's local governments remain on alert against avian influenza, enlisting civil servants, police, and soldiers in quarantine efforts. The nation's culled a record number of poultry birds in a record amount of time, more than any time, including the country's first AI outbreak in 2013. Kim Yo-sun has more.
This season's bird flu outbreak in Korea has led to the culling of a record number of poultry birds, over 28.4 million nationwide. That's the most since the country's first ever outbreak of avian influenza in December 2013. In fact, the quarantine authorities say that the nation has lost 17% of its poultry stock. Although only 2 new suspected cases of AI have been reported in the past 3 days, local authorities are on alert because the movement of people reaches a peak around the end of the year, which can exacerbate the spread of the virus. The falling temperature is another factor that can help it spread. All local governments are engaged in efforts to contain the outbreak, with Chungcheongbuk-do province intensifying supervision of the region's migratory bird habitats and poultry farms. In Jeollabuk-do province, public officials, police officers, and enlisted soldiers have been mobilized to strengthen sterilization efforts there. And Gyeongsangbuk-do province has called off all annual year-end sunset events. It has also laid out mats on the ground at scenic outdoor places where people will gather to see the first sunrise of the new year, which sterilize the shoes of visitors so they don't inadvertently bring or take the virus with them. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is set to lay out his plans for 2017 in a New Year's speech. His remarks could provide some insight into the direction Pyongyang might take, especially with leadership changes in the works for Seoul and Washington. Connie Kim takes a closer look at what we could expect from the unpredictable young leader.
Kim Jong-un's New Year's speech is set to lay out the blueprint of how he plans to rule as he enters his 6th year in power. The young leader's words are carefully scrutinized each year for any clues to the secretive regime's intentions.
Kim Jong-un's annual New Year's speech aims to consolidate the regime. It also lays out the direction the leader will take to run it.
Pyongyang has stated that its strategic stance as a nuclear state has changed since Donald Trump was elected the next U.S. president, calling for a change in Washington's North Korea policies.